Hi Adam, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing, Luke?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
So today we've got Adam Kerr from Primas Law, going to go give us a great insight in terms of business and what it's like building a law firm, especially with all the bumps in the road we've called it earlier on over the past few years. But we're not going to dwell on it, and I think we're going to have a great conversation. So, just firstly, would you just give us a bit of an insight in terms of what the law firm does, how long it's been around for, and yeah, just go back over quickly over the past 10 years and how you've come to this point.
Sure, yeah, a little whistle stop. Firm opened its doors in January 2014. We are a purely commercial law firm, so we just focus on what you might want to call business law. We don't do any kind of private client work, so corporate, real estate, commercial, litigation, insolvency, all that kind of stuff. Um, Started it was just little old me on day one, and then have just kind of grown organically during that kind of what's almost a 10-year journey. We did make one acquisition during the way, which really helped us to kind of push on and spread our wings. But other than that, we've just grown organically during that period to get to a size where now I think there's 55 of us, give or take.
Mhm. And what made you want to start your own law firm?
I think most lawyers are by their nature egotists, and probably it was a feeling of I could do it better than where I was. I think also I was relatively young when I did it, and I think law firms can often be run by more senior people, and perhaps I had a different view on how it could and perhaps should be done. I didn't have kids at the time, so that kind of frees up your decision making a little bit, doesn't it? So it was either then or never, I think.
Amazing. And did you always intend only to stick down the business route and not deal with the general public, or was that a decision you've made along the way?
Yeah, I mean, we've had opportunities to kind of spread into what you call private client work, but I think, to be honest, that kind of core business for us works very well. You do get a lot of full service law firms, but we don't want to be all things to all people. I think the world that we operate in, we understand and we know very well. We understand the commercial environment, and I think being niche and bespoke in that sense really helps us.
Mhm. And when you said that you saw potentially some more older generation running the law firm in a particular way. So how would you say that you've changed the way that you run your law firm versus what maybe a traditional law firm might look like?
I think I think there's a kind of personality side to it, I guess, in terms of a different generation operating just in a fundamentally different way. We we don't really run the business as a law firm. We run it as a service delivery business. It just so happens that the legal services that are the ones that we provide. I think historically some law firms have been rather bogged down in being a law firm and what that means, and historically how law firms have been run. And I think when you start from scratch, you're not encumbered by any of those things. You can go and build a business as you want it to be. I think tech's a big part of it. Introducing tech into a huge, big legal operation, is quite a daunting task. Whereas we were kind of early tech adopters, and so that side of things I think helps and changes how you deliver your services, how you market your services, how you price your services, what your routes to market are. So I think tech's an important part of that. But probably more than anything, it was just about filling a business with the right kind of people, down to earth people, people who are plain spoken, people who deliver kind of commercial information in a straightforward way.
Yeah. And have you, I always think that business has changed so much over the past like 3 years, then 5 years, 10 years, like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I get the impression these like old, long-standing business industries like accountancies, law practices, or whatever, the way that they were set up was sort of like you had one or two partners. They didn't really have to do much marketing and sales because they've got, you know, the family lawyer or the business lawyer that's been around for years and years and years. And I think now
Yeah.
we've got a lot more younger people going into these traditional professional services type businesses,
Yeah.
which is then having to, these, you know, old school type businesses, and now having to really get into marketing, understand selling, understand, you know, building a, you know, like you say, getting a different routes to market. Is that something that you've found as well in your firm and had to become more competitive, or that's like a, yeah. Anyway, let you.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, you know, we're quite agile by nature, and so I think we can be proactive, but we can also be reactive. So where we see opportunities, where we see changes in kind of the economic environment, we're quite nimble in terms of how we can address those. I think with a larger beast, whether it's legal or not, I think that's quite difficult to do. I think a business is the product of the people that are within it. So where you get different generational attitudes, ways of working, skill sets, you know, all of those things feed into the business and how it functions. So I do think what you might call the modern law firm is much more a product of its human components, and with the tech wrapper that can go around that. I think you can do things in a slightly different way.
Amazing. You've touched on a couple of things there, or touched on people a couple of
Yeah.
times there. So what have you learned over the past 10 years of being an employer, and why is that such an integral part to your business, the people that you employ?
What have I learned? You learn things every single day, I guess, don't you? And you've got to be open to that. I think maybe starting with the recruitment side of things, I think probably we, as a smaller growing business, you tend to be more reactive when it comes to recruitment rather than proactive. I think if I could do it again, I would be more proactive when it came to recruitment, be a bit braver in the early years. I think from maybe kind of year 5 or 6 onwards, we've been more strategic about recruitment. But in the early days, you're so focused on trade that we weren't as kind of proactive as we could have been. I think in terms of people and building a firm in that respect, I would probably say we've tried to build a team rather than add staff. And I think those two things are fundamentally quite different. We don't bring anybody into the firm without having a very serious think about how they're going to fit into the ethos and the culture, the team members. Will they be collaborative with the other teams? You know, that's as, if not more important than the content of your CV. You know, we're quite a personality-driven group, and so the kind of human characteristics of those people are crucial to us, and I think that's at the core of partly our success and certainly our growth, because as we've got more disciplined about that, we get those decisions right, and it encourages growth in and of itself.
Yeah. Somebody once told me many years ago that when you're looking to build a business, you need to build your first 11. Quite often people, you know, even like think about from football, you know, when you get paying for players and they're only going to sit on the sub bench, you've not got that winning attitude. You want to be trying to build your first 11, you know, do you defend, your midfield, your attack, keep these strong people throughout the business, and then sort of build around them. And I think what you're touching on there as well is that the culture component of and somebody's attitudes and beliefs is a big part of why you recruit them rather than their capabilities on paper, let's call it. So what sort of attributes or culture or attitudes do you look for when recruiting somebody?
Well, look, I mean, without meaning to sound oversimplistic about it, I think the main thing is that they're just, you know, they're just good people. Um, you know, sometimes, particularly in my profession, you know, people can be a bit spiky or a bit kind of egocentric, a bit not, you know, it's just the nature of the breed, I guess, and I don't exclude myself from that sometimes. So I think we've just tried to find really good lawyers, but plain spoken, down to earth, just a nice bunch, you know. And that might sound it's actually harder to pull that together than sometimes you might think. But yeah, generally speaking, we just have a policy of trying to bring in personalities that are, you know, that are good guys or good girls, and the other stuff goes from there. I think particularly with junior lawyers, you know, it's incumbent on us to train them and develop them and all the rest of it. So if you get if you get the right personality in, then actually, you know, a lot of that then is on us to make sure that that person has the right platform to go and develop and progress. And so that there's definitely a symbiotic element to the employer employee. You know, it's not just right. You work here now. You know, crack on. You know, it's a partnership, and the team have got a role to play in how they deal with things. But we've got, you know, an enormous role to play as well. And hopefully we manage to get that balance just about right.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of when you're talking about getting the right people in, a lot of people, a lot of time recruit on skill and then fire on attitude.
Yeah.
And what they, you know, what they need to try and get to grips with is that if people have got the right attitude, like you say, you can teach them the skill set. Right?
Yeah.
People have the right fit for the business. You can
yeah
the other core learnings, but you can't necessarily teach attitude or culture. There's not
yeah 100%. And you know, I think it's important for us to know that if we have an employment client who needs to deal with our litigation team, that they're not going to get a completely different experience from one team to the next. You know, the nature of the work might be very different, but you'll still deal with good people who are plain spoken, who try and look beyond the law and look at the commercial scenario that's in front of them. Don't use a load of legal technical jargon. Don't write 50-page emails. You know, give advice. Don't just sit on the fence. Say what you think. And I think, you know, if you move our clients around the firm in different departments, they'll get hopefully a very kind of similar service delivery experience in that respect. And from a branding perspective, you know, to build a brand, that consistency is important.
Amazing. So sticking with the consistency. So I know that you decided to acquire a law firm along your journey.
Yeah.
A couple of questions I want to ask you about that. Number one is what made you make that decision? And then number two, sticking with the culture thing, how have you then managed to maintain the culture that you've got when you're bringing in a different set of people into your business? Because that law firm would have come with team members as well. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing maybe you looked for the right law firm that was going to maintain the culture that you wanted. I'm just guessing that, but
yeah. So taking the bit about you know, kind of why that particular firm, we had a gap with us in terms of the M&A work that we were doing. Kind of, we weren't, you know, we were doing corporate M&A work, but below a certain level, and we really wanted to kind of push on and do some higher value, more technical kind of corporate acquisition work. And so we were introduced to Gary, who had set up and ran his own firm. And I think then, you know, once you meet, you just click, and you can't do much about that. You either do or you don't. And I think we just did. And so, you know, that's a huge part of it. I think in terms of the team, there were some people who worked there that fitted with us and some that didn't. And some of that you discover along the way, and some of it you kind of knew pretty early on, or kind of pre-acquisition. And I think you have to be quite disciplined about accepting that some of those people weren't for us, and kind of letting them, shaking their hand and seeing them on the way. I don't think there's any other way to do that. You can't make square pegs fit round holes. And I think you have to be honest about that and go into it with your eyes wide open. And it's not easy, but I think it's important you protect the whole rather than just the individual. And so we had to make some tough decisions, no two ways about it.
Amazing. So in terms of being a business owner, being an entrepreneur, there's quite a lot of time pressures being pulled from pillar to post. So how do you go about managing your time, and also how do you go about not letting it impact your personal life and correct, trying to find a balance?
Yeah. So there's probably two things. The first is, so I've got quite a young family. My boys I've got two boys, they're 9 and 7 now. Callum, my oldest, was born 3 months after the firm started. So to some extent, not letting work impinge on your personal life, I didn't have much choice because I had a 3-month-old at home, and there's certain things that go along with that. I think I made a decision, a choice very early on that I was going to manage those two parts of my life in a very particular way. I was very, very keen not to become an absentee dad, quite frankly. Someone who just didn't see them on weekends. I wanted to be there for bath time, wanted to be there to read bedtime stories and all that kind of stuff. And I think once I made that clear choice, it was then easy to build things around them, because that was a very clear kind of mandate that I had. And it's hard work because it might mean that you get up early or you work late, particularly as you're going through kind of some rapid phases of growth and COVID and challenging times and all that kind of stuff. But having that kind of clear decision really helped me. I think the other thing is, when I step through the door, my kids don't really give me a choice. Like I'm fair game as soon as I'm in the house. So yeah, exactly. And actually, they kind of save you from some of that work stress, because whilst there's other stresses that go along with it, you don't think about work all that much. I don't have much, until they go to bed, I don't have much choice or much chance to think all that much about work, because they want to play or read or, playing football or whatever it might be. So they take some of that choice these days out of my hands, because once I'm visible, I'm theirs. So they're only young, so I'll take advantage of that while I can get it, because probably in a couple of years they won't want too much to do with me.
You won't be cool anymore.
No, exactly. Yeah, at the moment, kind of me and my wife are still their favourite toys, but we're not far away from that not being the case. So, so I just make the most of that while I can.
Amazing. So obviously we've had some. Every business owner on the planet has had some bumps in the roads over the past few years. So, but not necessarily specific about the bumps in the road that we've had, because I think a lot of people have talked about that to death, but I do think there's probably been lessons learned from a financial management perspective.
Yeah.
So what advice and what things have you done over the years to make sure that the financial situation of your business is maintained?
Yeah, so we maybe born out of my kind of initially quite financially conservative start, we've always been quite kind of compartmentalized financially wise, particularly when it comes to tax. So we've never treated tax as our money. Kind of when we get that in, it was always ring fenced. We make monthly provision for corporation tax and things like that. I think that takes a huge amount of pressure off. I know a lot of firms in my world come the end of the VAT quarter, they're scrabbling around for cash. They're putting pressure on people to deliver bills and all the rest of it. January with corporation tax is the same. We don't really go through those squeamish periods because we make kind of, ongoing provision. And whilst that can lean out your available cash to go and do some other things, it does alleviate some other kind of it doesn't create operational stresses when it comes to back quarters and year end and so on. So that I think has always worked quite well for us. I think we were always relatively disciplined when it came to cash collection. COVID, I think, brought that particular issue front and center for lots of businesses. Cash collection in my world can be a challenge because you don't need us to keep the lights on. If you're a manufacturer, you're making widgets or whatever it is, you don't necessarily need us as a core service to be able to go and do X, Y, and Z. And that can sometimes mean that you're not top of people's priority list when it comes to payment. Relationships help, having good relationships with your clients, and being kind of very open and transparent about what we want from them in terms of payment milestones and things like that. So that certainly kind of stood us in relatively good stead. I think you also can't take your eye off it. If you have one good month, one good week, one good quarter, you've got to keep a very rigorous focus on margin and on cash. There's that age-old thing, isn't there, about kind of turnover's vanity, profit sanity, cash is reality. And I think never a truer word was spoken.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that's quite an interesting point about some majority of business owners that I end up speaking to. Like, so if you are in this situation, like, it's absolutely normal, those who listening, but they would have their money in their trading account and, I've got 300 grand in the bank or 500 grand or whatever it is in the bank. But it's like, how much of that is actually yours?
Yeah.
Half it's the VAT man, half it's this. And suddenly if you owe a couple hundred grand in VAT and tax, and then you get paid late a minute, and then suddenly that you could end up with, you're only a couple of bad payers away from being down to 10, struggling to make payroll, right? So that was a decision you made early on in your business to do that, which is incredible. What was the reason for doing that? If you'd never run your own business before, how did you think to do that from day one?
Well, it wasn't my money. And I think from a visibility perspective, it really helped me from a decision-making perspective, rather than have to go through the rigmarole of, well, how much is that? When's that got to be paid? Actually calculating some of that stuff can be quite complex. Whereas it was quite simple to say, well, the VAT element of that bill is X, and I had a separate account, and you just move it. And again, I think it's one of those things that once you start from that, it would be very difficult now, 10 years old, to implement that system, I think, because you'd be used from a cash flow perspective, from a working capital perspective of using this money in a certain way. I think because we did it from day one, it's just the way that we've always done things. I think visibility wise, I guess as the person who's looking at working capital, what can we deploy here? What can we spend there? I think that clarity about available cash in a real sense, I find that very useful. And, particularly with the corporation tax element, if we wanted to kind of cycle some stuff through and move it out or take a view, you've got some flexibility there. But the starting position is whenever we get, particularly now we're not on a cash accountant VAT cycle because of the size of the business. So, as soon as the money lands, it gets moved. And kind of our financial manager is very happy. It sleeps a lot better, I think, because we do it that way. Yeah.
And even if you're smaller businesses, maybe if you've not got a financial management, nowadays, like a lot of the challenger banks, like Monzo, Starling, those types of things, you can allocate a percentage of whatever comes into the bank into a tax pot. But I would highly recommend having like multiple tax pots, trading account pot, maybe various different pots in your business.
We separate out our tax. We also separate out our rent because that's payable quarterly, and it's the other other than wages, it's the other kind of main chunk. So again, it would be easy to spend that money in a certain way and find yourself, oh, I've forgotten about that. And so we just don't go through that. We make a weekly provision for rent and one or two other kind of sizable things. And it's there if we need to do stuff with it. But generally speaking, once you get into the mindset of moving it and cycling it through, and this pot here is kind of pure, firm, available cash, if you like, you just get used to treating it as such, and so you don't find yourself getting caught short.
Yeah, I think a lot of when you can remove the worry of cash from a business owner, because 90% of the worries of a business owner that's maybe not doing as well as what they could have been doing, or they're maybe growing fast. And I think once you can remove that and you've got a cash flow forecast and you know exactly where you are, they just become a whole other, be able to operate at a whole nother level, because everyone's only got so much bandwidth. So removing that stress, we can use our bandwidth for growth. So talking about growth then, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where's next for
it's always a tricky one, that I think, because I think growth's very cyclical. We've always found, kind of you go through a nice sweet spot and then you get to a point and inevitably like, right, what's next? We tend to run kind of overarching 3-year business plans, which are quite high level, quite aspirational. And then we have much more granular kind of 12-month delivery plans underneath that. So I think when we look at the next 3-year one, we're probably in a position now where we went through quite a strong period of growth in terms of headcount and revenue last year. This year, the business plan is very much focused on delivering on that investment. And then next year, we will go again. So, we've never been a firm that's building to sell or anything like that. So that certainly isn't an ambition. But I think we focus more on not, we want to be a 100-person law firm, or we want to be, we want to be this. It's more about we want to be known for being this. We want our reputation to be this. And I think that's much more central to our kind of planning process. What do we want to be? What do we want to excel at? And put a plan behind that. So I think when we look at the next 3-year one, it will be to take us from the current level that we're at in terms of reputation and skill sets and qualities, and target those as growth, as opposed to, right, we want to put another 5 million quid on, kind of on turnover. That'll come if you do this right. That will follow. I've tended to be of the view that if you lead purely with revenue and forget about these things, you can become quite imbalanced, particularly in a world like ours where the quality of the service that you deliver, people pay really good money to use their lawyers, and they are entitled to expect that they are getting the absolute best quality service and advice that they can get for their money. And so we focus on delivering those things, and the revenue growth will follow and has followed as a natural consequence of that. I think if you just chase a pound and you don't think about how you're delivering it, the quality of what you're delivering underneath there, it wouldn't take very long for our hard-fought reputation to be lost very quickly.
I think when businesses grow, there's like growth, a stage of consolidation. Growth. It doesn't necessarily just grow like that. There's a bit like that, and I call it, you need to make sure your insides are growing as fast as your outsides, because
absolutely.
Because either if your insides are going faster than your outsides, then you're going to pop, and if your outsides are going faster than your insides, you're going to put. So it's trying to balance that.
Definitely.
Making sure we're growing, but also we can deliver on what we've what we've requested or what we've acquired in terms of new business and people.
Yeah, 100%. Goes back to that point about being proactive about some of these things. I think if you're forecasting for growth and modeling for growth, sometimes you need to front load the resource and the infrastructure that goes along with that. There's no point going and winning a new client and spending a load of time and effort in doing so and giving that client a big sell and then under delivering. So I think what we've tended to do is look at our forecast and look at our model and that growth plan and that strategic plan and look at where that takes us and then look to try and build infrastructure and resource before you get there and build up to it, so that when you're in a position to be in the center of that forecast, you're not unable to deliver on the things that you've strived towards and built towards.
That's interesting. I do find that as a lot of people's challenges when looking to grow. It's like, what do I push first, the cart or the horse?
Yeah.
And I don't think that you're saying that you sort of put the cart there before you put the horse on, because
we do now. Yeah. I can't pretend that we did in the very early stage. I touched on it before about kind of recruitment. I think you are more, or we certainly were more conservative in that first 3, 4, 5 years. And then I think we realized that, and the business was probably a more stable entity by that point. And so we felt we could be a bit more brave, a bit more expansive. But I think from that kind of 4 or 5 year period onwards, we've been much more kind of considered about how we build and doing it right. I think in the early stages, you can just get focused on trade, on revenue, on turnover, on a big client win, on a big case, on some kind of quite micro rather than macro things. And I think as we've grown and developed, we've got much better at looking at the macro piece as far as the whole firm's concerned and what that means. But that takes it, for us at least, that took a degree of experience and kind of decision-making maturity, I guess.
I think that was a lot of that was underpinned as well by your strong financial management as well, because you can then make the financial decisions because you know exactly where you are with your numbers. Has there been any? I like marketing. Absolutely love it. So has there been any marketing initiatives or marketing strategies you've been particularly proud of over the past 10 years, or anything that you've learned that this works better than that? And
I think so probably in my world, most businesses generated by relationships. That's probably true the world over, actually, in lots of ways. But I think certainly with professional services, it's very relationship driven. People still very much buy from people. And so a lot of our business development strategy is around giving people the time and the opportunity and the resources to go and maximize their networks and give them the right exposure. I think on a more kind of marketing PR side, looking at the wider firm, it's very much been brand awareness for us. We're still only 9 and a bit years old. We compete with and rank against some very long established, nationally well recognized, regionally well recognized firms. And so we've had to have a big push on brand awareness, from a social media kind of sense, and also just from attending events and sponsoring things, and just building the awareness of the brand and who we are, opening some doors. Fundamentally, we're quite good at winning and seizing opportunities when you put us in a room. It's not always a physical room, but you give us an opportunity, we create an opportunity, we're quite good at converting it. I think for smaller firms, particularly competing against big boys, and our price point isn't low, we don't seek to be that. So the brand awareness piece for us has been kind of like an ongoing effort, and it doesn't happen overnight. That, it takes time, it takes patience. So I think we've put quite a lot of time and effort on that PR kind of socials side of things, particularly over the last 3 years or so, I'd say.
Amazing. So just beginning to wrap up, what's probably been, do you read?
Yes.
What do you think's been some of the most influential books that you've read that have helped you in building a law firm? Business books. I mean, like, obviously not some law textbooks, maybe some business type book, entrepreneurial type books that have probably given you.
Do you know what? I'm not, when I say I read, I'm a social reader. I'm not a big one for it. I certainly don't read books about how to run a law firm. It's not, if I read, it's more articles and journals about, the wider economic environment. I'm not a big one for reading books by very successful entrepreneurs. I'm more focused on contextual stuff, I guess, more kind of contemporaneous periodical type things. But again, very often outside of the law. I don't read a huge amount. I read about legal developments, but if I'm going to read about business successes, I'm more interested in trying to draw things from other worlds. I think it's more eye-opening for us. And my profession, my work can learn a lot from outside influences. We've historically been quite an insular, well, we're lawyers and we're law firms and we do things in a particular way. So I'm more interested in that. Do you know what I think?
Is that like sport? Is that like music? What sort of like?
Do you know the best source of information for me, actually, in terms of that is talking to our own clients, talking to them about their businesses, understanding what they do, how they do it, where their pressure points are. Having conversations like this. What's worked well, what hasn't. We're a firm that tries to. We have lots of long-standing repeat client work, and so you do get the opportunity to get to know the businesses. And so that, I think, as much as anything for me, has been a really interesting, good way to draw on other worlds, other markets, other sectors, other service delivery models, because you can ask more. I can ask. It's an interactive process, that for me. I can ask questions and take things from it. I've found that more useful over the years.
In like a tech world or startup world, there's a thing, it's called customer listening, which is and the purpose behind customer listening is to get product market fit.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can get product market fit is by speaking to your ideal potential customers. Yeah. So that's probably been a big impact on your business over the years, by having those questions and finding out like what's important to them, what challenges they have in them, what are they worried about, what are they scared about. And that's going to probably didn't do it, but I don't know if you did it by design or not, but that is a big part of if a big startup is going to get 2 million, 5 million, 100 million pound, that's what they want to see. Like, tell me if it's pre-revenue, what, like, which customers have you spoken to and how much is this the right fit for your product or service? So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I won't pretend it was conscious in the beginning. I think I'd come away from a conversation thinking that was interesting. Actually, we could do something like that, or a variation on a theme, at least, even if it was a completely different business. I think once I started to come away, just coincidentally having more and more of those thoughts, I then sort it out on a more kind of proactive basis. The other thing I think is when we look at business plans for each individual team, we've got much better at then deliberately going to clients and saying, right, what's happening what do you think's coming down the road in this world? For a real estate team, they'll go and talk. We do a lot of resi development. So Simon, who heads up the real estate team, he'll go and have lots of conversations with his developer clients and funders and understand where their pressure points are going to be in the next 12, 18 months, what they think's coming, what the opportunities are. And that then really feeds into the plan for that team that we put together. So there's a more kind of higher level piece where just, oh, it's really interesting. Do you know what? Actually, we could maybe do this. And then there's a more kind of micro bit to it where we will go and seek out specific information to try and feed into a business plan for a particular sector or team.
Amazing stuff. Adam, I think we've probably covered enough there today.
Yeah.
It's been really insightful, learning about cash flow and culture fit, and how you set the strategy for your business in terms of customer listening and all that type of stuff. So it's been really interesting. Thank you so much for coming on. How would people get in touch with you if they wanted to? Best going to the website or particular email? What's
Yeah, I'm on the website. My email address is adam.kerr@primaslaw.co.uk. So yeah, anyone should feel free to reach out, even if it's just for a chat. I'm always very keen to just have conversations with people.
Wonderful.